Hey, Andy, it's such an honor to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Let's do some off the cuff questions.
Okay.
If you had a time capsule and you could go back in time to any year, which year would that be? Or which time would you go back to?
Um, if I could go back any year, I would probably go back maybe to 1776 and see how the whole thing got put together in the United States. I think that would probably be a very interesting time in our history of some very brave and patriotic people and who were, challenging the major power in the world to create a brand new world and brand new opportunity for others. So that would probably be where I would head to.
Nice. If you were the governor for one day, what would you do?
If I was the governor for a day, I think I would try to bring people together to try to figure out how we best solve the long-term economic prosperity of our state. Maybe a summit with Senator Berger, Speaker Moore, Representative Reeves, and Senator Blue, and try to brainstorm on what we should do looking 10 years, 15 years, 25 years down the road on how to make sure North Carolina is a competitive economic force.
Nice. If you had to change one rule in the government process, what would that be?
I would probably say for maybe selfishly to have session limits so that we knew even if we were certain periods of time, but that there were scheduled times when the legislature was as a whole was not here, just so people and staff and legislators could plan their lives.
Who was the most famous person you met?
Was for this person probably Hank Aaron, the Major League Baseball player, when I was a young kid, or maybe Evil Knievel, who I met at the World Golf Hall of Fame a long time ago, back when he was trying to jump the Snake Canyon.
Nice. What is the best advice you've ever gotten?
Um, Treat everybody the same, no matter who they are, whether they're the president of the company or the person that's cleaning the bathroom. Treat everybody the exact same.
Wonderful. What is the hardest part about your job?
Um, I think the hardest part about my job is probably navigating and juggling between different priorities for different of my type of my members, who may be in different sectors of retail and may not care about one sector of retail but care about a different one, and making sure that we're solving everybody's needs.
What is the favorite type of music do you listen to?
Oh, I'm sort of a cross between the Led Zeppelin classic rock. I'm a Zeppelin head, as well as the Jimmy Buffett acoustic guitar.
Wow. And if you had all the money in the world, what would you do with it?
Um, I think I would donate a certain portion of it to charity, but then I would probably make sure that long term my children were set up to be able to do the things they wanted to do educationally and professionally.
That's a good segue to get into your childhood. How was your childhood like? And was there any interest in politics back then?
Um, I had a great childhood. So I grew up in I was born in Lumberton. My father actually went back to school at age 30, and I was born in 31, and he went to Pembroke State because his uncle coached baseball there. And my uncle, his brother, coached baseball there. And so he went back to school after taking some time off. And then I grew up in Southern Pines my entire life and went to public schools, K through 12. And um, my parents were both small business owners. My mother owned a personnel service. So she helped people place jobs, get into jobs, and she was sort of an independent in that world. And then my father had a very interesting job in that he did two things. He restored historical properties like Tryon Palace and the Campbell House in Bowie's Creek and Somerset Place out east. But then we also moved cemeteries. So we dug up graves for right-of-ways or private developers, or when somebody found a family farm on a piece of property they bought, we dug the graves up and moved them to another cemetery, which is not it's sort of a niche industry. But so two parents that worked in the same office, they shared an office, had a sister, have one sister that's 3 years younger that lives in Greensboro. And a lot of our world was focused around sports. And I played, baseball, I mean, football in the fall and basketball in the winter, and mainly baseball in the spring, and eventually wrestled. But my family, we spent a lot of nights at the Little League field and the baseball field as a family. And, that's what we did. It was before this travel world where you traveled all over the time, every weekend. And instead you played in the community, which I think really helped mold me, because you were playing with the doctor's kid, and you were playing with the brick mason's son, and you were playing with the kid whose dad was the butcher, and you were playing with the kid that was living in the housing project. And so all on the same team. And so it really gave you, exposure to a lot of different people. But a very loving family. Great family. My father's deceased almost 20 years. Mother's still living. But I was very thankful that I had really good, solid parents, who believed in me, and my sister as well.
And you weren't, what were you deeply passionate about back then, or what would you want it to be?
I thought I wanted to be a baseball player. Everybody wanted to be a sports star, and so professional baseball player. But I then, and not from a lot of people where they got into LA Law at my age. LA Law was the TV series at the time. I wanted to be a lawyer at some point in time, but it was about old shows like Perry Mason and LA. I'm sorry, John Grisham books, and then at one point in time, To Kill a Mockingbird. I thought that's what I wanted to do, was go be a lawyer. My dad had this niche industry, but you had to go get licensed as a funeral director, which was not I don't think in my purview of something I was interested in doing. So I tell people, I remember my father saying, as I stood in a wet grave in Asheville, North Carolina in December, putting chains around a vault to pull it out of the ground, that was why I was going to college. But that's what I thought I wanted to do. And you mentioned politics. My family was involved in politics, in that my dad was very heavily involved in the JCs, which was like a political feeder type organization, as a group that helped people, but also had a political aspect to it, and that you ran for office and things. But my father also participated in things, campaigns, whether it was Rufus Edmondson for governor, and my mother came up with a slogan for then Lieutenant Governor Jimmy Green of "I'm a Greenbacker," and it became their slogan. But my parents probably moved more along the political spectrum, during the years. But so there was always a political angle to it, but it wasn't, the sole focus.
And your transition to high school and getting into college, what did you think? Or because I see you got into the political science into college. So
Right.
what was the trigger point for that?
And I had an interesting, so I was supposed to go to Furman University, to wrestle. I was on a scholarship to wrestle. That summer, we got a letter in the mail that they were going to end the program within 2 years due to Title IX. And so I immediately transferred to Elon, and they let me in a week before school started, which you couldn't do in today's world. I think it was because we hand drove our application up, and I think they made sure my dad's check would cash, and they let me into school, which would, again, not happen now. That is a phenomenal institution, has really grown. Um, and I thought political science was a pathway, potentially, or the best pathway to law school. That being said, I remember my father, when jobs used to be in the Sunday paper, and you would go get the Raleigh paper and the Charlotte paper and the Fayetteville paper, and on Sunday, and look for jobs in the want ads way before the internet or Indeed. And my father said, "I want you to find every person that's looking for a political science major to hire." And I came back that Sunday morning and said, "There's none." And he said, "Well, then you better figure out what you're going to do and how to get to law school if that's what you really want to do." So it's sort of a put up or shut up sort of moment for my father, who was paying the college bill.
So what happened after that? So after you got the degree, did you immediately go and join the law?
No,
Or
so I'll be honest, I probably didn't do as well the last year or so in school as I probably should have. And I met my future wife and got married, and I had a hard time getting into school. And the first round, I couldn't get anybody that would let me in. The second go round, I ended up getting into Richmond in their performance-based admission program, that you have to go to University of Richmond, and take 2 classes in the summer. And if you make 2 A's, they let you in. And if you don't, they don't. and then I got in the last day before I had to make that deposit at Richmond with at Campbell. But I was a little different. I was married and my wife was working in the Research Triangle Park for Glaxo doing meeting planning, and so Campbell at that time was still in Buies Creek. So I drove to Buies Creek every morning from Raleigh and opened the library at 7 a.m. And my wife went the other direction to Glaxo, and did law school that way. But so I took 2 years off. In between, I did some human resources work at a company called Mitsubishi Semiconductor in Durham, where we had people that made computer chips 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I decided that was not the life for me, the human resources side or the manufacturing side. And um, so I went to law school, like I said, and did 3 years of law school at Campbell. And that one year, after my first year, I went to work as a clerk with Farm Bureau Federation. At the very last minute, 1Ls law school first year have very little value sometimes to law firms because they know enough to be dangerous, but don't really know enough to be practical. Um, but they gave me a chance. But I thought I was going to be doing a little bit of political stuff, but I thought I was going to be doing more helping write an employee handbook and doing some insurance work and some of that. But that sort of fell by the wayside. It was put your stuff down, you're going to the legislature. And that was summer of 1995. And so that's sort of and I got the bug, as soon as I got in that building. And I mentioned I was into sports and I'm competitive. And it's very much in that world of, you got to know the rules of the game. You got to know how to play the game. You hate to lose, and how do you win the game? And that's changed over the years some, but that's sort of how I got the bug professionally.
Interesting. And if you had to like turn back the clock, do you feel like getting that political science degree and then the law degree helped you in your job right now?
I think it may have opened some doors for me. I don't know that the political science degree certainly showed me really the three levels of government and or three branches of government, and how they interact, and the importance of them, and the balance of power, and that sort of thing really helped me understand that part. And I did an internship and worked on a political campaign, a couple of those, and political theory and things, of understanding different viewpoints. The law piece, I think, opened the door for that first clerkship and really gave me that opportunity. In my job, it helps me sometimes in that I know where to go in the law. I know how to piece together an amendment maybe better than I would have if I would not have been in that path. I understand how that fits together maybe a little better based on the legal piece of it. I think it also, at Campbell, you're very much forced to do a lot of oral advocacy, and you do a full trial from start to end. So when Senator so-and-so calls you up to the dais and starts asking you questions, it's not a whole lot different than when a judge in a moot court trial was asking you explain your argument.
And now you are at the NC Retail Merchants Association, and you joined in 1998. Is that right?
Yes, I was at Farm Bureau I interned, and then I actually worked part-time through law school my second and third year, and then worked another year, 15 months afterwards, after I passed the bar exam and everything else, and worked in their legal department. And then I actually replaced the person at the North Carolina Retail Merchants Association, a gentleman named Don McCorkadell, who works for SAS. I replaced him at the Farm Bureau and then at the Retail Merchants Association. So it's sort of the running joke, I was following Don. But I came in 1998, became general counsel doing legal work, and did that still have that role as part of my job. And I did that from 1998 through the end of 2011.
I see. So can you just break this down? Like, you've been there for more than 2 decades now. So tell us, like, how have things changed, both at the legislature, as far as like your organization goes, and internally as well, as far as your role goes?
We still had fried squash back in 1995. Back then, I think there's been a number of changes, and sometimes we joke about these. I talk about where the vending area is, the Siny Die area is. That used to be the phone room, and it was before people had cell phones, and maybe somebody might have had a pager. Now we have to explain to people what a pager is. But there were two ladies that sat there all day long and took voicemail, phone messages, and put them on pink notes, went up on the bulletin board. So you would stop by there every hour to see had somebody called me or returned a message. And so they played like the switchboard. There were now you get real time, and your service does it too, electronic notifications and the calendar. And then the calendar came out every morning, and you rush to get that blue and yellow calendar from the Senate and the House. And sometimes you would have to call the clerk's office, to say, hey, is this bill going to be on the calendar tomorrow? The clerk's office took a lot of calls. And people, amendment forms, people walked around with amendment forms in their bags that you would write out things, things like that. Technology wise, there was no audio, there was no oral, there was no audio, there was no video there. So that really changed the world. The public, as much as people talk about transparency, it's a lot more transparent today than it was for a number of years. They would have committee meetings around the desk in the chamber. Now we really can't go on the House floor or Senate floor, but they would take a 5-minute recess and call a meeting around someone's desk. And similarly, like the last few nights of session, you would be there till 4 a.m, and they would be having intermittent rules meetings in a different building just to see who could outlast who. So some of that has really, over the years improved dramatically.
Interesting. And as far as like NC Retail Merchants Association goes, what is your organization's mission?
Our mission, we were founded in 1902, so we're 120 years old, heading to 125. We were founded in 1902 to represent the retail industry before the North Carolina General Assembly, and to a lesser extent, Congress and local governments. Our core has been the North Carolina General Assembly work, and we have sort of branched out off of that over time, and I think we're really proud of that in some of the things we've done, and trying, especially through COVID, to promote the retail industry. We went through this piece of so many people were afraid to go into a store, and it was a time we didn't know a whole lot, that you might can get COVID from a countertop or something like that, and it was why we had plexiglass and occupancy limits and things like that. So we have really focused in, especially the last year or so, on trying to make sure consumers came back into our stores to try and promote the industry that we represent better.
And what kind of policies are you currently working on, and what is the most proudest thing which you have done?
Right now, this past session, we worked really hard on a provision dealing with organized retail crime, which is a growing problem in our state and our country, of not your child stealing a pair of sunglasses or a t-shirt, but organized gangs that wake up every morning with their job being to steal from retailers and stealing. There was a bust in Charlotte for $250,000 worth of power tools. There was one in Cabarrus County for 400,000. And the violence has escalated, and so we worked very bipartisan this time with a number of Senator Britt and Representative Bowles and Representative Reeves and Senator Muhammad on a package to really focus in on it, giving the district attorneys and police the authority to try to put some of those people away for a significant amount of time, because that issue used to be looked at as a crime against property, but it's turned into a crime against people, whether that's human trafficking or terrorism or opioids or those sort of things. So that was one we were really proud of this time. And then a couple of the other ones, we were the driving force, working with Representative Moffitt and Senator Johnson and some others around the social district issue. Again, trying to bring people back into downtowns, giving them a reason to come back in, where you could take an open container in a certain area of alcohol and walk between restaurants and stores, and trying to, again, get people back into their downtowns to give foot traffic to shop. And then I think the other piece is our team here has done a really great job over the last 2 years during COVID. And some of the people we represent, whether that's especially in the pharmacy sector, gave so many COVID vaccines, did so many COVID tests, were an easy access point for people to get that and get their booster and get information. That we worked really hard and in cooperation a lot with, for the instance, the Medical Society and some of those, about how to facilitate that and maintain a medical home. But we're really proud about what our people did during COVID, and in the grocery sector as well. Of those folks never closed, and dealt with all kinds of things, supply chain and other things, but to make sure people were able to get food and get medicine and things like that.
And how do you prioritize your work?
sometimes people would say we're gluttons for punishment in that we rarely ever tell our people no. And we have people, let me say this, I meant to say this earlier. I have people that operate one store in one location in rural North Carolina, all the way to people that operate at the size of a Walmart or a Lowe's or that size. And so, and generally they work pretty well together, but there are issues. This morning I was trying to help somebody who's having a hard time getting their ABC permit from the ABC Commission. I'm trying to help them solve a problem that they don't have the resources to do because of they're trying to run a store versus maybe a larger operation has a permitting person and a legal person. And so we try to look at those as each individual, and they all have importance, and we want to help them. Every now and again you run out of bandwidth. We try to see what's important to the larger sector of our membership, but we also try to make sure that we don't lose sight of this person over here that has one or two store locations, because not only is it important to the people they represent or they employ, but if you're a grocery store and you're having a hard time with an issue, you're also maybe the only grocery store in that community in Eastern North Carolina. It's really important that we keep you up and running. And so we try to prioritize. Everybody's our priority is sort of how we take it.
I see a lot of awards in your office, and what really drives your passion for you to be able to, do your job?
Um, I really appreciate and respect the people that we get to represent. And my father used to say, I said this previously somewhere else, if you wake up on Sunday morning and you have a pit in your stomach about an anxiety about having to go to work on Monday, you're probably in the wrong job. And I don't know that I've ever woken up with that pit and anxiety. Everybody has from every now and again. And but the people that I get to represent are the people in communities that sponsor the Little League team and the high school band, and work on the community college board, and they donate to the food bank, and they do things in their communities that are the fabric of those communities. And then I get the honor to go out and represent them. And so that's sometimes what drives me when I've had other opportunities to leave, potentially when people have called me and said, hey, would you be interested in this job in DC or over here? And I say, I really like where I am. I really like the people that I get to represent. And I like helping people. That one person operator, we like helping really a lot. And we do a lot of work, for instance, in the emergency management space. Elizabeth Robinson on our team does an amazing job representing the business community at the Emergency Management Center. But when we're helping that guy, there's a hurricane and he's trying to get power back in a grocery store in a small town so he can help his community. And we can get on the phone and help with Duke Energy, connect them and help move him up the priority list so he can open and serve people in that community. That means a lot. I mean, those are the people they're working really hard, and they worked very hard during COVID to make it through to the end. I need to have half as much passion as they do to do what we do every day.
And if you had to give advice to someone who wants to get into the field of lobbying, what would that one advice be?
Um, to really examine whether this is the lifestyle that you're willing to do. And I say that I love what I do, but it's not for the faint of heart. And your world is in a roller coaster a lot of times, and your schedule is dependent upon 170 people and when they're going to be at the legislature, because if they're there, you have to be there. And or the calls that you're going to get at night at 10 o'clock at night about this amendment that's going to be on the floor tomorrow morning. Those aren't things that people normally do. I also say, it's hard to schedule a vacation and tell your family when you can and won't be available. I think COVID has made us recenter that, rebalance that. But I think that's one that you've got to examine that. But then, and I'm sort of breaking the rule because I was saying one more thing. The other piece of advice I would give would be to talk to some people that are really good in this profession. And there's so many of them. But sometimes, as you mentioned earlier, people have this perception of what lobbying is and that it's backroom deals and shrimp and buying legislators. And none of that's true. It's a lot of it is hard work and sales and persistence, and being honest and trustworthy.
Good segue into looking into the future. What is it that you would like to be doing maybe 5, 10 years down the line? The platform is open to you, whether you want to talk about your organization as well.
5 or 10 years from now, I hope we have at that point, pushed all the way through COVID, and I hope I'm still in this same role. I hope to finish out here and run as hard as I can through the finish line and hand the baton off. I was lucky; my boss did that, ran all the way through the finish line and handed it off to me, and had our organization in great shape financially and organizationally. I hope to still be doing that and mentoring people that are here. I hope I have my same team here. Um, but but I really hope that we continue to elevate my industry, our industry, the retail industry, who sometimes gets seen in a light that's not on the same level as some or other organizations, but it's the largest private employer in the state, have dynamic jobs, whether that's especially the corporate headquarters we have here that have IT and communications and marketing, and the distribution centers that you're seeing built that have great benefits and are a great fit for rural North Carolina. But I think sometimes we get overlooked as a really quality employer in the state of North Carolina as an economic driver.
Andy, I just wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Not a day goes by when I go to the grocery store and I see a plaque says NCRMA. And every time I see that, I think of you and Elizabeth.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for the service you do and for the retailers as well.
Thank you. Uh, but let me say one other thing. I think I'm getting, and I'm 52. I shouldn't say that, but I'm getting to the stage where I try to focus in on trying to help and you mentioned if you were getting into this business. I was very lucky. I had really great people like a Mike Carpenter with the home builders who took me under his wing and showed me a lot. John McMillan, who great lawyer with Manning Fulton Skinner, Zev Alley, who was the granddaddy of them all in the lobbying world, Roger Bone, other people who forced me to go to breakfast at Finch's when it was still there, and get out of my comfort zone, and showed me how to do this work and do it right. And I try to, there's a number of other people my age and a little bit younger that try to do that with people just so they understand this is a great profession, but it comes with doing things the right way and doing them appropriately, um, and in a way that's going to make them an effective advocate.
Andy, I'm pretty sure you're going to receive a lot more awards and well-deserved ones too. Thanks so much for taking this time to be with me here.
Thank you very much for having me.